Hi, everyone, and welcome to our masterclass on how PressReader supports language learning. Today's guest, Maureen Chapman, is a lifelong educator. She taught for 15 years in elementary, middle, and high school classrooms and spent 8 years in school leadership. As a curriculum director and head of instructional leadership team, Maureen has overseen curriculum resources, student data, instructional coaching, professional development, new teacher induction, and career education. Today, she serves as co-founder of an education consulting firm, Core Creative Partners, where she leverages her experience, expertise, and love of education to her work in coaching, consulting, and facilitating professional development programs. She's a huge advocate of using authentic text to build real-world language skills. And today, she'll be sharing how other K-12 teachers and librarians can use PressReader to support with this. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
So, Maureen, we're really glad to have you here today to share some specific examples and tactics for using PressReader in a language learning capacity. So, first up, I mentioned that you're an advocate of using authentic text in language learning settings. Could you share a bit more about what authentic text is and why it's so important for language learners?
Yes, absolutely. Authentic text is text that is written or produced by someone who is a native speaker of a language and is intending that piece of text to be written for other native speakers of the language. So, for example, in Spanish authentic text would be written or produced by a Spanish speaker for other Spanish speakers. I, as an English speaker, could not produce a text that could ever be called authentic in any language other than English. And that's really important because language is very interconnected to culture. There are lots of elements of language that come into play that only an authentic text can really capture. Additionally, when we have authentic text, we are really meeting students in a school setting with something that is relevant and engaging. It's designed for people to just use the way that language is meant to be used. It isn't a simple see, spot, run sort of sentence that's oversimplifying what language is trying to accomplish across the cultural elements and not offering you the chance to compare what one language is doing with another language, for example. It's not putting you in the community. So we have these 5 C's in language, and there's more than just the word on the page. And so that authentic text is going to capture a more holistic view, and that's going to be more engaging for students. It's also going to allow the learner of a language to encounter text that's got a varying language level. We want to be, when we're learning a language, bombarding our students with comprehensible input. We want them to understand or be able to comprehend what they're reading, but we also want that to be engaging. So when we use authentic text, we can really help students to see language in a variety of levels. And there's really 2 types of learners that we're encountering in school settings that are going to be needing authentic text in a language that they're not speaking at home. One is a student in a world language class. So you could be a student taking Spanish class, or you could be a multilingual learner. So a student who is learning school in an environment conducted in a language that is not the same as the language you speak at home. So maybe you speak Spanish at home, but at school, your school is conducted in English. So if we could take both of those types of learners for a second, the world language student really needs to be able to encounter authentic text. That's one of the key pieces of language learning from the world language standards, so that they can, again, encounter all the variety and nuance of the language. Additionally, for world language teachers who are expected to show authentic text, there aren't really a lot of resources available for them. So when I was world language director and teachers were trying to teach with authentic text, they really needed support on how to find that. So PressReader was one of the best ways that we could easily pull things up and have some engaging authentic text that was really interesting to students and didn't require a big lift for the teachers to pull up. For the multilingual learner, a lot of teachers across every grade level are working with multilingual learners, and multilingual learners are a huge asset to our community. They have a lot of knowledge and skill to offer. And also, our teachers are often not that well prepared or resourced to meet their needs. So as a result, this population of students, which in the United States is the largest growing demographic of student, is often not having their needs met. And so you might have a student who's bilingual, but not biliterate. So they might speak and listen in Spanish, and they might present as literate in Spanish, but actually the reading and writing in Spanish is not a natural process. So if we don't provide them text in Spanish to continue to develop their literacy in Spanish, they also won't have those skills, literacy skills, to build their English literacy. So furthering their literacy in their home language also furthers their literacy in any other language they might learn. So again, we need to provide good, authentic text in their home language to build their literacy in reading and writing. And PressReader is a really wonderful way to do that. So we can talk a little more about how to do that. But again, for teachers, they can get kids logged into this, and kids can find these great, engaging reads that are really important for their language learning.
That makes sense. A lot of applications and kind of, nuanced areas that you can provide context with that authentic text.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shortage of ways to use authentic text in those two settings, in a world language classroom or with multilingual learners.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And here is a quote from the World Readiness Standards for learning languages that describes the importance of the nuance of authentic text. Maureen, do you want to just have a little comment on why this is important to you?
Yeah, and this is, getting again at what we were speaking about before, but just the richness of language, that language and culture are coming together. And this is for literary text as well as informational text. And this reading of nonfiction text is a very important skill that we emphasize in any language learning. We also have authentic text in film and video, in advertisements, in music. So all sorts of really wonderful places where text can appear. But all these rich texts and features of prose are revealed at their deepest level only to those familiar with both the language and the culture. So again, this is in our national framework in the United States for language learning with the World Readiness Standards, and they really do advocate for the use of authentic text across genres at all times.
Great. And Marie, even before we connected with you for this webinar, you had promoted PressReader as a tool to support language learning through authentic text. Could you just share a little bit more with us about how you first discovered PressReader and where you see the main value in supporting language education?
Yeah, well, the first time that I really came across it, I was serving two complementary roles. As a curriculum director, I was in charge of all of the curriculum materials for every department, and I was also in charge of the curriculum implementation. And I had a really great partner in curriculum materials in the school librarian. So I was supervising the school librarian, and we would work together to fill gaps for the kind of learning our students needed to do. So of course you have textbooks, but those need to be supplemented with material that really meets your students in the place where they are and with the needs that they're presenting according to the context where you're learning. And at the same time, our Spanish teachers were really working to develop authentic-based textual learning. And so they were really done with using their textbooks. There is not the same curriculum rating systems available for world language texts as there are for, say, math texts or English language texts. So a lot of times you're kind of just on your own looking for what are high quality materials. And I was really working behind the scenes to help them find things to use and reaching out to different experts and asking for their advice. And it was through that process that I came across PressReader, and I felt like I had hit the jackpot because here collected in one place are so many wonderful and constantly updated sources. What teachers would say to me is they didn't want kids to be bored. You know, all teachers want students to like their class, to like what they're reading. And in the absence of providing them with easy to use materials, what people will often do is go on Teachers Pay Teachers or go on other websites and find text that's been written by, in my case, written by an English teacher for Spanish students who are learning Spanish. So this is the sort of the opposite of authentic text and is really common. Maybe somebody who grew up speaking English and came into teaching Spanish, just using Spanish as an example, starts to write stories that their students will be able to read. But of course, those stories will never be authentic. They will be simplistic. They will be biased toward that person's upbringing in a different culture. So to make it attractive for teachers to replace that kind of text with authentic text, you really need to make it easy to find what you're looking for, and that's where PressReader was so helpful. So that's how I first came across it, was really trying to fill a world language teacher's request to find easy to find authentic text.
That's great. I think I can imagine some of the content on PressReader for kids is quite engaging compared to maybe some of the other options and resources out there. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second major place that it came up was in strategic partnership with an urban school serving primarily multilingual learners. And the teachers were often also multilingual learners, but of different, or multilingual, but of different language backgrounds. The students were mostly in that community speaking Portuguese. And so the teachers were very open to having those students, once we really processed the importance, to read and write in Portuguese. But again, they wouldn't have had books on hand. They didn't have resources to build huge Portuguese libraries in every classroom, but they did have computers and they did have tablets. So in the morning when students would come in, they could go into PressReader and find magazines and things to read that they found pretty interesting.
Great. All right. And we would love to see PressReader in action, Maureen. Would you be able to give us a quick demo of your workflow when it comes to identifying the appropriate authentic text samples?
Okay, so let's see if I'm on the right page here. So here is an example of already logged into an article for a magazine, but let's go back and see how we got here. So we can see that we are on the home page of PressReader, and it is bringing us to some featured publications, which are in a variety of languages. And then when we scroll down, we're seeing inside of the catalog the particular library's featured publications, then newspapers, then magazines, and then we can see a variety of categories. So things that really strike me when I look at this from a K-12 lens: animals and pets. Kids, especially really kids of all ages, love to read about animals and pets. Entertainment, gaming. But we also have really specifically a children and tweens section as well. So we'll come back to this and see how we can drill down and see what comes up when we do that. But again, you can just sort of browse this way, and that can be nice, especially if you know that you're looking for a student with a particular interest or you are teaching on a particular content theme. But if you scroll back up to the top, you can really just filter the catalog by language. So if I know, first of all, that I need something in a particular language, this is going to be how I start. So just going on that theme of Spanish, we can click on Spanish, and out of 64 languages, and again, you can see what a wealth of and variety of languages are offered inside of PressReader. It's really wonderful, especially for multilingual learners. Perhaps your school is not offering Romanian, but you might be serving a child who speaks Romanian. And so again, having those students whose languages are not particularly centered in a curriculum see something come up available in their home language is really affirming and important, especially for those students who aren't feeling seen as often. So when we go into Spanish, what I like too is that you can further filter by country or region. So we have Spanish texts from different parts of the world. So if your school is usually seeing your students are using text that is usually centering Spain as the Spanish source, you could actually go and be intentional about looking at other regions if you want South American or Puerto Rican, especially depending where your students are from or might likely travel. But for our purposes, we can just keep it in Spanish in general and see all of these options. So again, we can do this, and then when we open up a source, to see what's interesting. Again, this is what I had up earlier, was this sports, because again, sports might be a popular read that students are feeling motivated to read. We can click into it. We can also click heart to save it so it shows up in our publication. So if we go through the effort to find this, we can find it easily again later once we've done that. So we can read the whole thing. One thing that I really like, because it's so simple, is advertisements. Sometimes advertisements are a really rich way to look at authentic text. Even seeing that, for example, in this advertisement, English comes up. But also you are getting authentic short bites of text that can pair with other longer text that you might be using. But then we additionally have the option to do some good functionality. So we could click listen and have this read to us. So students with headphones who maybe have stronger oral skills could help them reinforce what they're reading by hearing it, or just build their listening skills. We can also download it to a device so we can read it for later. But another thing that's really cool is we can translate it. So if we are starting in Spanish and we want to see it in English, we can do that. So this could be a way, let's say you wanted to pull up more of a pop culture magazine and you're not really sure as the English speaking teacher if it's appropriate, you could preview the text this way, or for students who are just trying to get a check on understanding to make sure that they're following along appropriately, this can be a great option for them as well. So that's a good way of just sort of seeing generally, and just going back to the catalog again, filtering by category, especially if you're working with students who are in primary school. You may want to just go to the children's and tweens to find things that are geared toward and appropriate for younger students. And then again, you can filter by language. So here this time we'll look at French and see that these are really current. These are coming up in the current months. And again, so much more engaging than many of the books on the shelf that are written for school learning, as opposed to just written for real audiences and enjoyment.
No, that makes sense. I think with those kids and tweens title, about 200 or so publications from around the world. I think 16 languages represented. So something for everyone, for to engage all kids.
Absolutely, yeah, and just bombarding kids with comprehensible input. Again, you just want a volume approach. More is more with people learning languages. You just need to keep reading, keep writing, keep speaking and listening. But again, that reading and writing piece takes more effort and more time, because again, it is not a natural process for learning language the way that we all learn to speak and listen no matter what, but we don't all naturally learn to read and write. So even more important to have some of those opportunities to pull up. And every little bit is helpful, even if it's, as I say, just an advertisement. So yeah, there's knitting, there's there's anime, all the sorts of things that you see coming out of the library in the maybe the target language of a school, but being able to offer that at scale with PressReader without having the huge budget to redo your library collection in every language that you're serving, which would just be cost prohibitive for so many schools.
All right. Thanks so much for that engaging demo, Maureen. What's your advice for K-12 teachers and librarians and how they can integrate PressReader into their classrooms? I know you touched on a few things already, but if there are any kind of last nuggets that you wanted to leave for some of our K-12 librarians and educators?
Absolutely, Kelly. I love designing professional learning, and I do think that what is the first and most important step is just making sure you are giving sandbox time, is what we'll often call it in schools. So maybe you can work with somebody who organizes professional learning time, the PD calendar, or the people who run grade level meetings, and say, hey, could I have 10 or 15 minutes? I just want to give people a chance to mess around in PressReader. So giving this time for people to just mess around and see it has to come before much else, because people just have a lot of different materials that they're working with, that they're being asked to use, and all sorts of adaptive, instructional, so many things. And so we don't want to overwhelm people with all of our great ideas. And so I think just really letting people get in there and mess around is a great way to start. And then I would say the same thing is true for students. Let's say you're a classroom teacher who teaches some multilingual learners, or you're a world language teacher. If you said to students, hey, today I want to start by we're coming in from lunch today, I want to have a little bit of sandbox time. We're going to get on computers and mess around with PressReader to see what we think. And I'd love for everyone to come up with 3 ways they think that we could maybe use this, or tell me 3 things you liked, so give them some sort of prompt as they're messing around. But I think kids would be kids are usually faster than adults at picking up new technology, and they love to be asked to take the lead, and they should be asked to take the lead. Of course, it's their learning. So really engaging them to say, like, hey, I'm thinking about using this. Here's why. What do you think? I want to give you guys like 15 minutes to mess around, and then I'll give you 15 minutes to share what you thought, or whatever number of minutes you've got, and start there. And then I think go from there. So once people kind of get generative and just get comfortable with it, then maybe talk about how are we going to use this, or hey, maybe what do you think? Is this once a week on Fridays when we come in, instead of reading from our other books, we'll read from this? Or again, if it's a multilingual learner and we want to just advance their literacy in their home language, maybe they could be reading on PressReader when other students are reading from other books. Or early finishers could be, maybe we've got a list of 5 options of what you can do if you're finished early. Maybe going on and reading in another language or reading in your home language could be one of those options. So there are little ways with routines to build things in to the day, but it has to start with just getting past the barrier to entry. That first step of getting logged in and fiddling around and seeing what it is does deserve a little bit of time up front. So I would start with that sandbox, and then I would maybe find a routine that you could tie it to, whether it's an early finisher routine, a start of the morning routine, and after lunch routine, something like that.
I love the idea of letting it be student-led, because you're spot on. They just have a kind of natural affinity for getting in and playing and understanding how to use these tools better than we do. So
right.
That's a great idea.
Student what to like. So as soon as you say they're going to like it, that's ruined it. So you have to sort of play it cool with anything with kids. Like, well, I don't know. What do you think? You tell me. And then
let them discover what they love. Okay, that's great. Well, Maury, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to learn from you today, and have this opportunity to chat and understand how PressReader can be used in this space. Of course, it's great to learn firsthand from a curriculum director about how this kind of fits into the language learning model, and then to learn more about the value of authentic text within the learning environment. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for spreading this work and making it easy for teachers and school leaders and librarians to bring students what they really need. It's it's an area I feel really strongly about, and I'm really grateful that products like this one exist and can be accessed through the library. It's a great service. Thank you.